Our next guest is a former Vancouver Canuck TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Mr. Frank Corrado. How are you?
I'm good, boys. I'm good. It's can I start with a quick little story?
Please.
Sure.
Okay. So, being from Toronto, and I may have told you guys this in the past, but being from Toronto, living in Vancouver a little bit, this is the biggest difference I noticed between the two cities. In Toronto, if someone asks you what you do, you tell them you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a police officer, whatever it is you do, that's what
Mhm.
you tell them. In Vancouver, if someone asks you what you do, you would say, I go to yoga 3 times a week, like to jog the seawall, and I get to Stanley Park a couple days a week as well.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a difference between the two cities as far as, when someone asks you what you do in Toronto, I think they just want to know how much money you make. I think in Vancouver, they basically just want to know, do you have a life or do you have any hobbies?
Right. Tell Saravelli that. He seems to think we're all rich guys who wipe our ass with hundreds or something.
In Vancouver, it's more the what
It's
do you
live
do is
to work.
how fit are you?
How
Basically,
fit are you?
yeah.
No.
What's your Whoop score?
Here, people work to live. In Toronto, people live to work.
It's
Oh,
true.
yeah.
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 Because in Toronto, you're in the rat race,
Yeah.
right? You're pressed up against someone on the TTC, making your way into the office.
Rush hour on Fridays, 11:30 a.m. That's
In
what time
Vancouver.
most
That's right.
people are cutting out at around 11:30
That's right.
every single Friday.
There's no such thing as rush hour in Toronto anymore. It's just a constant, steady
constant.
flow,
Yeah, no,
never
exactly.
moving
Yeah,
anywhere.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the could have used a few more transportation engineers in that town. No, I'm dead serious. Like,
Yeah,
I knew one who said, they didn't do enough consulting early on, and
We could go on this. We could go on this for hours because they never anticipated anything to get built outside of Yonge Street and Avenue Road.
That's
And now there's like one subway line that goes east-west. It's a joke what's
Right.
going on. Anyways, what are you gonna do? It's all good. We
For
get by. There's
for
worse
those-
things happening.
For those who are unfamiliar, if you need to get south from the very busy Highway 401 into downtown Toronto, you have highways on both the west and east perimeters that are pretty much packed at all times. And then you have like two just city streets that you can take.
Yeah.
If you're up for like an hour long red light to red light to red
And there's
light.
a long history.
Oh,
There's a long history of why that is. And the Gardner, I don't know what the Gardner equivalent in Vancouver would be. I guess it's what goes right through Rogers Arena. There's that road. I can't even remember.
The viaduct,
That's
Georgia.
just a viaduct.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it's like that's down to like two lanes for the next 14 years. So good luck with that.
Well, the inching along, just city streets is also a Vancouver thing because
That I learned in Vancouver.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you could get caught in some red light situations there, or like have a bridge situation, and you're like pulling your hair out. So I learned that, even though it's not the highways per se.
Getting to the highway from downtown on a busy summer afternoon, that can be a while. Here in this town, we are not devoid of
JT
traffic.
Miller should take a boat from West Van
He
to
should take a helicopter.
Falls
I mean,
Creek.
they're getting rich enough that he should just buy a helicopter and land it in the one empty lot in downtown Vancouver, right across the street from Rogers Arena, and that could be his commute to work.
Yeah.
We digress.
Yes, we do.
Frank, Canucks Twitter is undefeated. It's a phrase you're fond of. It reared its head again this week with your boy Luke Gastick.
Did it ever? My goodness. Listen, Luke's a friend of mine. I think he does a great job. But at some point, I was lucky that I grew up in Canucks Twitter, let's call it, because I had Twitter when I got drafted by the team, and I got to see it. And like everyone stubs their toe at one point with Canucks Twitter, and you learn how to navigate it. But man, it's just you can't paint everyone with the same brush. There's a lot of, it's a very passionate fan base in Vancouver. I always say this, it's a very knowledgeable fan base in Vancouver because there's people that really take an interest in the team. And if you're going to go on, Canucks Twitter and kind of say something that's maybe false, there's the stats and the proof to kind of go against your point or support your point. Like there's a lot of passion, there's a lot of knowledge, but there also is, there's an ugly side to everything, but it's important to not kind of paint them the same. And I think, Luke's, he's good. He's going to move on and learn from it. And At one point or another, I think everyone kind of runs into Canucks Twitter a little bit.
How did you know not to? Because you do a great job of being objective, which I think people here really appreciate. Like your boy Kolyakovo there, blue and white is the only thing that he sees. Like what made you decide you weren't going to go down that road?
I just think it's you call it how you see it. I think I got some good advice early on
Yeah,
where actually I'll give Jeff O'Neill a lot of credit. Like Jeff called me early on when I started out
and
and he
he's a
said,
blue and white guy too. Like he believes blue and white only as
for
well.
sure,
Yeah,
for sure. But he kind of told me, he's like, if something's bad, you got to say it's bad. If
yeah.
something's good, you got to say it's good. Like you can't kind of sit on the fence too much because if everyone's seeing something and you're the analyst and you're not saying it, like your credibility is going to come into question a little bit. It's okay to analyze hockey with an objective mind. It is that's our job. Um, you don't want to get into too much of the bias, I guess. Either way, you can still be passionate and be fair, and I think that's kind of what I try to do, and I think a
Have
lot
you
of people
spoken to
try
Ray
to
much
do.
about this? Did Ray ever opine with you about any of this?
Ray has been, first of all, I was a massive fan of Ray, even going back to when I played. I
Yeah.
always valued Ray's opinion, and I really respected this about Ray: is morning skate. Ray would walk into the room and he would talk to you, and it felt like you were talking to a player. It never felt like you were talking to a broadcaster. So I always appreciated our conversations, and where Ray has really helped me is with the color commentary,
Mm.
just understanding like how to prepare for a game, things you're looking for, things you want to have on your sheet, as because you have a sheet on each team, right, with a bunch of things like what do you want to have ready to go game wise. But I think Ray has always done a great job, even in the Toronto market when he was on overdrive every single day doing Leaf games. If they were playing great, he said they were playing great and he told you why. And if they were playing like junk, like he wasn't afraid to say it. Like I think that's the most important thing,
Yeah.
and that's what you want to be known for. And you know what? Like so take the Canucks, this year, and you and like we've been doing this now for a year and a half, let's say. Things were not peachy for the Canucks when I first started doing this show with you guys, and we weren't afraid to kind of voice those opinions. And what we saw, the way this year has gone, I found myself getting ready to come on your show and saying, I think the last 4 or 5 weeks or appearances have been very positive about this team. But
Mhm.
it's not like I couldn't find things, to say that were negative. They just weren't presenting itself. So it kind of, if the team's playing well and everything's going well, that's what you're talking about. If it's not going well, you have like an obligation to point that out because people can see it.
Mm. Um, you just finished on the Memorial Cup in Saginaw, and we noted on Monday that Canucks prospect Josh Bloom, who we talked about last week, scored the Memorial Cup winning goal. We're going to get to a bunch of Canucks stuff here, but just a word or two about his tournament and whether or not you think we're looking at a player there for next year.
It could be, very well could be. I thought that was his best game. The goal aside, I thought the final game was his best game. Um, and he must listen to Sekeres and Price. I'm telling
Probably.
you,
Yeah.
because he probably does pre-game, post-game, all the time.
Yeah.
Because after I said, no more beaver tails, I didn't see one more beaver tail
No,
from him.
really.
Didn't see it. So I don't know. Someone must be listening to Sekeres and Price in his circle. But listen, I think his game is going to be simple. It's going to be effective. It's not going to be overly flashy. He works hard. He's in on the forecheck. I think there's something there in whatever role you can find for him. But like anything, it's up to him to progress into that. But for him to score the Memorial Cup game-winning goal right in front of the net, kind of digging away at it, I think that kind of embodies what he's like. Like he's a tenacious guy. He's going to get to dirty areas, and he's going to be, a straight line kind of hardworking guy. That's what I saw from him throughout the course of the tournament.
I still think the Canucks are missing that guy. So I think a fourth line, forward that digs and is aggressive like that.
Yeah.
Like I think that is
A fourth line Connor Garland. To
Yeah,
some degree.
yeah, exactly.
Hey, Frank, it sounds like the Canucks are taking a shot here at re-signing Elias Lindholm. I'd like your take on that on two fronts. Number one, they stacked the three centers this year, and it still wasn't enough to get past Edmonton. And if they are going to commit something in the neighborhood of 7x7 to Elias Lindholm, that probably means they're not going to be able to fill needs on the wing or bring everyone back on defense. What's your take? How sensible is it to, see if you can re-sign Elias Lindholm, knowing your other needs and knowing your finite cap space here?
I mean, I guess so. I don't have an issue with them trying to stack up the middle of the ice. I really don't. Like, I think there's a lot of teams that have success by doing that. Of course, cost is always going to have to be in mind with that. And if you do 7x7, now you're going to have, what do you have? 11 and change, 8 something in Miller, and 7 down the middle, which is not like, it's not uncommon, I guess, to have that much money in such an important position. I think you can make things work on the wing, but I think it's hard to make things work in the center ice position. So if you're going to prioritize one or the other, I'd be more leaning to prioritizing center ice and saying, okay, we can find other solutions on the wing. But center ice, a guy who wins a lot of faceoffs, a guy who is defensively responsible, a guy who can give you more offense than maybe we saw during his time in the regular season. I wouldn't be opposed to that. And if it is 7 million, okay, at least it's not 8, at least it's not 9. Like, this is probably a guy that was going into the start of the year like looking at more money than he's probably going to get after the way things went. So I wouldn't say it's a discount per se, but you're probably getting him for less than what he was anticipating getting if he had a massive year this year. He's 20, what is he, 30 or 31 now?
29. He'll be 30 in December.
Yeah. So that's the only thing. Like, how much term are you willing to give him? Like, do you want him till he's 37? Because now you're tied into him for a long time, and like, the cap's going to go up. Percentage of the cap is going to change, but that's the only thing I'd be weary about is how much term do you want to give that guy? And if there's more term out there for him elsewhere, do you risk losing him and letting him walk and saying, okay, you guys take the risk on the term?
Yeah, I'm almost willing to pay him more on a 5-year deal, but 7 years is too much.
Yeah,
too much.
Now,
too much for
when
me.
you've got the whole league at your disposal as a UFA, you can pick and choose and say, oh, well, these guys need a second line center, and I would probably play with so-and-so and so-and-so. Here, it's a little more up in the air as to who he plays with. Now, he was, quote-unquote, the third line center here. You could make the argument he had better wingers than Elias Pettersson, though, for much of the year when he was playing with Joshua and Garland, though. Do you think that's
bizarre, by the way, Blake?
Yeah.
Like, not to cut you off though. Like, that's one thing I would like to see different for next year is, Pettersson, he's on paper a lot of times the first line center. Why is it there's Mikheyev and I don't know who else was Höglander? Like, I would like to see, and I guess that goes to your point.
Lafferty was there.
Yeah. Like, I guess that goes to your point about prioritizing wingers a little more than prioritizing the center. It's like, maybe we can actually load up a first line that looks more like a first line instead of just putting it there on paper, and actually giving Pettersson a little more to work with. There's a lot of validity to that. I think, honestly, when it comes to Lindholm, if I could get it for 6.5, like if I could get it in the 6s, I would feel more comfortable. And I know it's just $500,000, but I think just having it look like a 6 instead of a 7 might even help things a little more.
You got to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Power play by committee. Rick Tockett's going to coach it some. Yogi Svechkovsky's going to coach it some. The Twins are going to coach it some. They coached power play 2 last year. Now we'll move on up. And of course, there will be a lot of input from players, namely JT Miller. Power play coaching by committee. How does that strike you, Frank Corrado?
What did Louis Domingue say? Not the best? I think that's where I stand on power play coaching by committee. I think there can be input from other people, but ultimately there needs to be one vision, one plan, and the players have to execute on it. I'll tell you a little story on why I feel that way. I was always coached, let's say, all the years I played. Here's your power play coach. and this is how we're going to do things, and this is our schemes, this is what we want to accomplish. And not that I was a big power play guy, but I paid attention in those meetings. I understood what was happening. A lot of times I'd be on, second power play unit, let's say. And everyone was most of the time on the same page. Even if we didn't execute, at least we were kind of all on the same page, as long as the coach wasn't babbling all over himself trying to communicate that to us. When I went to play in Sweden, played for Modo, first day I get there, the players that are on the power play say, hey, we're going to go do our power play meeting now. I said, oh, okay, great. So I go to the other room. We got the whiteboard out, and there's 5 of us sitting there. And one of the players starts doing the meeting, and he starts going, okay, I think we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then another player starts piping up like, no, maybe we should do this. And no, I like doing that. And I looked around and I said, shouldn't we wait for the coach to get here to start this? And he goes, no, they let us do the power play here. And our power play was probably negative 8% that year. It was awful because all it was a bunch of different opinions, a bunch of different people that like to do this because this worked with this team last year. Or no, I like to do this because this was good that year. Just never meshing together. And myself and the other import defenseman who played the power play, we kind of came to the realization together that players like to be coached. Players like to have that one kind of voice that tells you, this is how we're doing this. And yes, you're going to have some input. Yes, you're going to be able to tweak things as you go along, but it always kind of has to have that, like it has to have that one mission behind it. And I think too many people, too many cooks, it's like that it's like playing broken telephone. Like too many things can get miscommunicated to the players that actually have to do it on the ice. So I am of the belief that yes, players like to be coached. That's not going to be an issue. The players will be coached. It's just it's better when it's clear in this is my philosophy and this is how we're going to do it. And yes, you work together a little bit, but ultimately, like it comes down to that one person who's calling the shots in that situation.
And the buck has to stop somewhere too, right? When
Right.
there are issues, who's accountable for that? Who do you go to say, hey, there's an issue here, and you just want to know who you're talking to? But I mean, I would guess that that's largely Rick Tocchet on the power play going forward.
Head coach, ultimate responsibility, I would think.
Yeah.
What do you think of Martin H.S.?
He's a good player. I like the package. I like the skill set. I don't know if he was like underutilized in Carolina.
That's the
and
theory.
if he,
That's the theory.
yeah, like that's the thing is like, okay, underutilized. And the question I would ask is, he's skilled, more skilled than a lot of the players they have there. So why was he underutilized on a team that kind of needs that injection of skill?
Mhm.
Which is interesting. But I think he's very talented. I played against him in the American League a little bit when he was in Charlotte. That would have been his first year pro. I thought he was really good there, and he made the jump, and things seemed pretty seamless for him. Like he's probably going to be what he was. Maybe not this year because I think he played just under 80 games and he was just under 60 points maybe, but he's probably a 70-point guy.
Yeah, Saravalli said the
given
same
that skill
thing.
set.
Yeah, Saravalli was saying the same thing. I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, what do you think is the ceiling? Because I
I
think
think he's a 70-point guy. And maybe if you give him a little more opportunity and you put some people around him, maybe he is a point per game. But I don't know if I don't see him as a 90-point guy.
Right.
I don't even know if I see him as a point per game guy every year, but I like him as a player. I think he offers something. The way he skates, the way he handles the puck, he's got a good shot. I think there's something there. It just depends, depends on a lot of things. Who you're going to surround him with, how much you want to pay him, and how much term you want to have attached to that.
And a
and of
70-point
course-
guy probably high water marks 1 or 2 years above the 80-point mark, so you never know.
Yeah.
The other thing here, and his dad said this, but that maybe the Brind'Amour system doesn't suit him, whereas really Tocchet is almost the antithesis system wise, right? I mean, like Brind'Amour, they want to throw everything at the net, right, Frank? And whereas Tocchet is very much a no, let's be selective and get quality shots. So maybe that suits him better too.
Maybe, yeah. There could be something to be said for that. Carolina's a unique way of playing because even the way the decor plays, like, oh, we're in trouble, high flip. oh, we're in trouble, like, let's just push it and kind of skate onto it. I feel like the forwards there don't necessarily have the puck a lot. It's not like the most creative type of system. What can you remind me? What is his dad? Like, is his dad someone? Because I keep hearing Natchez' dad. What is this?
I think
Dads are
he's
very
just
prominent.
an involved parent.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Just, like calls. I don't know. Like when I hear so and so's dad,
Mhm.
it's it is a little bit of a red
Oh,
flag for me. Like the
for sure.
over-involved dad in pro hockey, I think, like we
Oh,
can,
for sure.
yeah, it's a little bit of a red flag. But that really shouldn't affect things at this level, I guess is my point. Like if your kid can play, he can play. And the playing should do the talking.
Tell that to Arturi Lehkonen. Remember his dad got involved in the Colorado business?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's just his dad spoke to media back there in the Czech Republic, and that was that. So,
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah. I think if my dad did media, he'd be talking about like cigars and cured meats and
Your dad did do media. He
Yes.
did Harrison Price
That's
some
true.
10 years ago, and he sent
And we talk sauce.
sauce.
Yeah, we talk sauce.
Tomato
That's right.
sauce. Mhm.
Yeah, big radio star.
Yeah.
Lastly here, size up the cup final for me. And is there any part of you rooting for Roberto Luongo to get a ring?
You know what? I think, yeah, for sure. I would love to see that. Like he worked so hard as a player. You think about all the years where he had to play so many games and so many playoff runs, and even the years early in his career where he was grinding with the Florida Panthers through some lean years and still was kind of established as one of the best goalies in the league. I have nothing but respect for him and what he's kind of transitioned to in his second career. I think there's part of it is there. I find it super bizarre that there's this weird campaign that people in Canada need to get behind a Canadian team. Like, I think if you're a fan of Vancouver, you're a fan of Vancouver. Like, why would you be cheering for the Oilers? It makes no sense for me. The only thing I will say on that is if you want to see Connor McDavid win a Stanley Cup, I can buy into that. Like, I think that would be cool. I think it's something that should happen at some point, just for him to be considered among the league's greatest of all time. I think a Stanley Cup might have to go with that. So you would think that this is an opportunity for him to get that done. It's going to be an interesting series because I think you have a very complete, balanced team that plays physical, kind of can play anywhere you want in Florida, and you're going to have superstar power led up front by the Edmonton Oilers and a lot of players who are kind of playing their best hockey or playing within themselves right now. So it presents an interesting contrast of which narratives are kind of come to the forefront when everything's said and done.
Well, you enjoyed, Frank. We get hockey back here this weekend.
Yeah.
Missing it this week.
Yeah, it's been a long week.
I was
like a bye week or something.
Yeah.
I was forced to watch those Blue Jays Orioles games, the first two at least, which terrible. Second
terrible.
Two were,
yeah. We excited for CFL?
Yes.
That's back.
Missed last night's. We were golfing, but I will sit down and see some tonight, and certainly the Lions and Argos on Sunday. Very much looking forward to that.
All right, boys. Let me know if you want a little wager on that one.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hey. All right.
All right.
Let me know.
Give me the Lions to cover.
Brady, honestly, are sharp in the back there.
He was all over it. It's like he was waiting for me to say something.
He was.
Yeah.
Grady will bet you on the coin toss if you'd like, Frank.
Yes.
Perfect.
Thanks, Frank.
See you, boys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Harrison Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.